would not be doing what I am doing without Leon Michels in my life. Absolutely 100% can tell you that now, hands down. Leon is really the master. He's a maverick. And he's so chill. He's like one of the most fun people to work with in the studio because he's always two steps ahead. Like he can hear things. And I'm still stuck in oh no, I need to do it again. And he's like, no, it's done.
From one of my favourite bands, Say She, whose album Silver I strongly recommend. From New York City, this is Piya Malik.
Yo, Tbone, did you produce this?
Sounds good, right?
Once you record to tape and you get that warmth and you have that like vibration, and look, we're all record collectors at the end of the day. That's like where the true friendship comes from. It's like the digging and the turning each other on to cool shit. Leon and I both geek out on a lot of Turkish funk, psych rock stuff and old Bollywood records. So that was like, you know, very much where that like exchange was born from, is just the love of those records and that music. And then I remember him asking me, because I was in another band that was on his label that broke up and I was kind of a bit sad. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I really want to sing in Hindi. And he heard something on that project. He heard me singing in Hindi in a little snippet. And he was like, hang on a minute, do that again. And he heard that I was using a different voice that was much more my true voice. Of course, when you're singing with other people in harmonies, you're blending and you're listening. So we call it, and say she, like the fourth voice is when we're singing together. It's its own thing. And it's not each of our voice as it is when we're singing our solo thing. You kind of like, you find them blend with each other. It's natural. Find the blend fast. It wasn't like we have to struggle to find that, but it's you're channeling a different thing. And voice or throat voice or chest voice, there's all different places that you can sing from. Like having your instrument in your body is kind of rad. The great thing is that my real relationship in my life is really with Sabrina and Naya. And it's always been like that, you know, and anyone who's around that and still wants to, you know, hang out with me, I think it's probably for the best that they know all of these other things first. And it's like warts and all on the road, isn't it? There's no hiding.
Wow. I mean, I didn't know, because there's a few things I didn't know. So actually, I didn't know Bradford was part of your story. I never did at Nottingham until we met here. It was part of your story.
Big part of my story, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was there for 5 years of my life. I absolutely loved it. I was at university there, and then I went on to work for Alan Simpson, who was the MP for Nottingham South back.
So you know Joe? Do you know Joe Simpson, his son?
I know Joe. Yeah,
Joe's an old friend of mine. So I went to college with Joe. I went to Glastonbury with Joe, like in the 90s.
Oh, I love that. Well, he was in the other office. He was actually in the Nottingham office. I worked in the Westminster office. And he was the first MP that I worked for. And, you know,
and a good MP,
kind of like
a proper good MP.
I mean, that's why he's a rebel backbencher. And he said all the things that I dreamed about saying. And I was so lucky. I worked in that office with Owen Jones, just me and Owen Jones and Alan Simpson. And not a lot of people know that, but who knew what Owen was going to go on to do, but I did know he was going to go on to do something brilliant, because he was, but I don't even know if people realize quite how funny he is, because he's also very in the media, but he is one of the funniest people you will ever meet in your life, possibly the funniest man I've ever met. And just so lucky, what a spoilt, you know, little brat I was, to be in an office, have him all to myself all day long, ask him any questions I wanted. And I was a newbie, and he really showed me the ropes in Parliament and introduced me to his very cool friends. And I treasure those days so greatly. And he influenced my thinking and the way that I write and my politics in such a healthy, wonderful way. And I always knew that I wasn't, you know, I worked and then I went on to kind of defect from the Labour Party and work with the Cooperative Party, and then defected to the Greens. Not that I ever voted Green because of where my constituency was, but I cherished my time with working with Caroline Lucas. She's just absolutely inspiring, and I worked in the office with her until I left Parliament to move to New York. where I worked for the Institute for Children, Poverty and Homelessness for a long time in that think tank. And that's when I became friends with, with Naya, and then moved into the building with Sabrina. We were always doing music on the side, but we were friends for 10 years, all doing different jobs and trying to do our music thing on the side. And then one day the sky comes, the forefront, and it's just all you've ever dreamed about. And we're so lucky because we now feel like we've got a better platform to kind of say the things that we want to talk about. My dad was a restaurateur before I was even born, so he went through quite a few different businesses and restaurants, which I love because he's always one of these people, you can't keep that man down. Doesn't matter if he made it all a fortune, and then maybe he'd lose it all. He kept trying. I've seen him, lose everything and start again. And his goal is always really to make jobs, create jobs and employ people. And I loved that about him. And I think I share that, responsibility. Sab and I always talk about this, like part of our goal is also to make sustainable jobs in the industry for people in the music business. What if we can create a team of people that are working for a long period of time? That's great. Growing up a restaurant brat is a very unique experience, and I really am so drawn to kids when I find out that they're well, my friends who have restaurants, I'm always like talking to their kids and giving them tips. You can't leave the restaurant alone. There was no such thing as going on holiday. Who's going to run the restaurant? There was no one you could trust to do it, to the level. And when we did, there was always a disaster to come home to. No offense to all the lovely managers we ever had, but in case they're listening, which they might be. It's a family. It's an extended family. It's just like a band, I see the parallels all the time and how I'm able to absorb all these extra people into my family in the way that my parents did, and my godmother who ran the restaurant. So my dad had Indian restaurants and my godmother ran the French restaurant, and the bistro was where I really started to learn French, because we would translate between the kitchen staff who were, Polish or some French speaking, Francophone, Algerian, Moroccan in management, in the front of house, a lot of French staff from the south of France and from Paris. So everybody was just clamoring all over each other. And in the heyday, that restaurant base used to have a lot of the footballers would come in, like Patrick Vieira and Robert Pires. And
so it was a North London spot, was it?
It was a North London spot, yeah. But then my dad's Indian restaurants, they were there he lived in California, where we were born, and then we came when we were 2 over to England, and he had other Indian restaurants there too. So it was just always growing up. It was a case of, if you were naughty, and as we grew up, we all had to work in the restaurant too to pull our weight. There's no such thing as pocket money in our household without working. You got to learn the work ethic. Yeah, and the fact to keep the family business going or whatever. But also, it was if you were naughty, it was do you want me to go tell chef? Am I going to get chef to talk to you? It was no, don't do that. It's the sounds of the restaurant that carried me all those years. I absolutely just still, when I'm in the kitchen and even if we're doing catering or a pop-up or an event, or even if it's just cooking for my big family, and that's where it really started, is that I have this huge extended family who all grew up in London. There's nearly 21 young kids running around at any given family do, because my brother there's so many brothers and sisters, and we all were in London. Eventually everybody all came down from Bradford, and we were all in London and very close knit. Doesn't matter how big the family was, they never separated from each other, and it passed down to our cousins. And we all have our little groups on WhatsApp now. We're still communicating, but the cooking was such an important part of our home and our household and our culture. And I think it's true for all immigrants. You come to a place, and how will people receive you and love you and accept you? Okay, we'll feed them. What do we have to offer? And I think food is one of the greatest things that all the Asian immigrants came and sort of did well, in a way. that was the other thing that sustained us, like doing the music, you know. In the end, I had to leave the think tank because I wanted to focus more on the music. And then you need to find your, as they call it in New York, side hustles. And everyone has about 10 side hustles to pay the rent. So insane here. And I started a catering business because it's like, well, what do I know? You go back to the things as a childhood and from your family, and I was able to get my license pretty quickly and work with other people because I knew and understood how to do it. So we started a catering business called Conjure Kitchen, and our first opening pop-up, it started just as pop-ups and we ended up doing more kind of larger scale events. But the initial one was opened at my friend's record shop that I helped him in the early days. I used to work there and cleaning all the records, and down in Red Hook in Brooklyn. And it was a pop-up for 40 people. And I had my friend Idan DJ, and it was just like this magical soiree. And we did like a 5-course Indian meal. And there wasn't a lot of there's hardly any Indian restaurants, and there's definitely none down in Red Hook in Brooklyn. So it was like a lot of people in the neighborhood who I was friends and close to had never eaten Indian food, and I couldn't believe it. So I thought, that's how it was born. I was like, right, I'm going to do a pop-up. I, used to do them in London and helping my friends who ran them quite seriously. So I reckon I could throw my hand at this. But the restaurant is like the restaurant you are. Of course, there's orders being barked, and you can't be precious. And the politesse of English society goes out the window in an English restaurant, even. So, like that's the other interesting thing. Like, I feel like there was always some sort of shouting coming from the kitchen, and the punters and the clientele would be like sort of half enjoying it, like the thrill of a big fight happening from the chef that you could hear from behind the walls. So that'll make the food taste more exciting. But we, and when I'm head chef, like I'm definitely, when I'm cooking, my kitchen, small spaces usually. Yeah, you got to be able to take orders, or I will send you home, and I have had to send people home before. But it's like it's paralleled in the studio too.
On Bollywood soundtracks, right? I got into Bollywood soundtracks, so I think I got into it like a lot of us after watching Ghost World. I was like, oh, Yam Pehchan Ho is a banger, and I'm going to start digging for Bollywood records, and I'm going to find all the Bollywood bangers. Digging for Bollywood records is impossible, right? Because there's so many of them, and they're in such poor condition. I don't know how to find the good stuff other than on comps and stuff. So tell me the secret for digging.
Come with me to Mumbai, and I will take you to Record Haji. Yeah, that's honestly where like I know podcasters can't see, but I don't know if you can see some of the records over there. That whole wall, and I've got another massive shelf on that side, but that whole wall is all Bollywood stuff, and none of it's like hugely rare or expensive. I went over with a couple of times with different friends, and we went and pulled a lot of stuff, and with the Record Haji mainly, he's the guy. And he's Chor Bazaar, which means thieves bazaar, thieves market. So you got to be careful there at night. It's a pretty scary place. I love all the dancing, like any of the stuff in the 70s, like Helen, she's an incredible dancer. So anything she's in, I'm usually like pretty stoked. But also like, I just speaking of that, like the remakes, like the kind of Hollywood rip-offs, as it were, that I just remember, because that was where we would watch movies endlessly. It was all summer long. I would go every summer to India to stay with my grandparents and my mum's brother. And so it's like 6 weeks every year, whatever. And my mum would just send us on the plane, even at 5 years, 6 years old. We would go as unaccompanied minors, and we used to get put in first class in those days when you were traveling alone at that age, and get toys and everything. One day we turned 11 and we were like, this sucks, we're in economy. Oh no, we have to like line up like other people. But yeah, they stopped doing that now. I don't think they let you travel unaccompanied, but yeah, she couldn't afford to come as well, but she wanted us to connect with that. And we would watch old Bollywood movies with my grandma for hours and hours. And I remember watching Kalnayaka and thinking, wow, they don't make movies like this outside of India. And of course, it's The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and it's just a rip-off.
पागल आदमी क्या देखा तूने
Hand the Rock's the Cradle is a rip-off of a Bollywood film.
No, the other way round.
The
There's
other way
a
round. Good say.
rip-off called Kalaika. But I watched it first, so it took me a minute to realise that.
Right. I mean, that is a strange film to rip off in a Bollywood style, I feel like.
You should watch it, though. It's pretty good.
ये बात तो हम जरूर बताएंगे जरूर बताएगा बताएगा
Thanks to Piya for speaking with me. Say Shishi's album Silver is out now. They're also on tour in the UK in March. If you get the Coco show in London, I'll be there. Say hello. A couple of other bits from me. I've got a new series that I've been sound designing that is out now on the Stack network. It's called Ghost in the Machine. It's a story of a young athlete who gained notoriety after being caught with a motor hidden inside her spare bike. The first known case of what is called motor doping in cycling, and it is a fascinating story that involves pigeons, stolen canaries and much more. You don't need to be a cycling fan to enjoy it. So that's Ghost in the Machine, and it is available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes every Monday. And of course, there's also the Sounds Good Right merch. If where you are is anything like where I am, you need all the clothes you can get. So, why not get a massive Sounds Good Right hoodie to keep you warm? Anyways, thanks for listening. This episode was produced, recorded, sound designed by me, Tom Whalley. And I'll see you soon.
Yo, Tbone, did you produce this?
Sounds good, right?